What's this? You're not gonna talk about some random Strat copy, are you? Didn't you promise something East German for the next vid?
Well, hello there. Yes, and yes, this is in fact East German. It looks like a Strat copy, it is a Strat copy, but it's an East German Strat copy made by Musima in the mid to late 80s, before the wall came down, so this is technically still an East German guitar from an era that isn't really looked at and talked about much. Well, no era of Musima's really talked about much anyway, so without further ado, yeah, let's take a closer look and see if this is as boring as it seems or if there's actually something cool hidden within. And yeah, spoiler alert, there probably is. Let's go. Well, yeah, it's a Strat. First of all, the finish checking is insane. I mean, I wasn't actually sure they used nitro lacquer still by that time, but it certainly looks like it. It's really not apparent on the back. The back is like quite smooth. It just starts happening on the little belly cut here, but the front is insane, as well as the back of the neck is totally checked all the way through, even the headstock. I think it makes this guitar a lot cooler, actually. It certainly is a little bit cooler than just a clean black Strat copy. It looks less plasticky. So for me personally, I've never been a Strat guy. I think those are like the most copied guitars on the planet and kind of boring in my opinion. You know, I love Musima for all the quirkiness and little fun details and unique solutions, and this appears to be the opposite at first glance. However, being old and worn like this is kind of cool. Doesn't really look like any of the aging on real Fenders you see or like the custom shop stuff they offer, but still nevertheless kind of cool. So what can we see here other than that? Surprising things as a Musima guy. Right off the bat, Phillips head screws. What the heck? Everything used to be flathead up to that point. So did they import Phillips head screws? Did they suddenly start making them in the GDR? I don't know. It's not just the guitar thing. I mean, everything. The cars were mostly flathead, and we get obviously new pickups, and those are maybe the most interesting about this. As far as I know, they weren't imported from anywhere, but developed in-house, or basically at Simeto in the village over that made the old pickups for them. I don't have any solid evidence those are actually made by Simeto, but it's a best guess type of thing. Continuing, once you feel the neck, you're immediately confused when you know Musima, because they tend to have, like from the 60s into the early 80s, those giant chunky necks that feel almost like a rectangle with the corners rounded off. I read a forum where some guy called it horse leg sized. And yeah, I have to agree, it's horse leg sized. This, however, is a very nice, comfortable, modern profile you wouldn't be surprised to find on any other instrument from anywhere else. Totally nice, totally playable. We have pretty big jumbo frets. That's unusual. We do not have a 0 fret. First time for Musima we get a regular guitar nut. You get what I'm saying. This is a very conventional guitar, but in that it is super unconventional for Musima. They developed a new, for them, trem bridge with all the saddles, and there are little Allen key adjustable height things in there. It's one of the early times we see Allen key on Musima guitars. This little switch up here, kind of hard to move. This is original. It's supposed to be a coil split for the humbucker, so that's interesting. This one is a 4-position switch, also made in-house or like developed in the GDR. This is not just imported from somewhere. We do have the original volume and tone pot, which you would think, yeah man, that's not a biggie. Those can be bought anywhere for cheap. You get these from China for a few cents. No, you don't. They used special pots in there with like tiny little 3mm shafts and also D shafts. So You often see Musima Lead Stars with those missing because nobody can find replacement for these weird shaft diameters. We're very lucky we have those. Next thing, the strap buttons. Look at that. We do have regular strap buttons. They look like Western ones, which is crazy because up to that point, Musima had these little steel hooks that you could basically hook your strap in there and have like losing protection. But they went with, in my opinion, a worse system to fit in. Anyways, on the headstock end here, yeah, the Lead Star I had an almost perfect copy of the original headstock. This one is like their own interpretation. And while it might look a little unusual for a Strat, if we just consider this design on its own without like a Strat body on the bottom, this was a solid 6-on-line headstock design in my opinion. It's unique enough to be fun, 7 out of 10. I plugged it in and unfortunately there is nothing coming out on no position. So yeah, we might have a problem there, but I hope, fingers crossed, that when nothing comes out, it might be a simple thing like just one wire fell off. If just one pickup is dead and the rest works, it's usually worse because it means one pickup doesn't work. So nothing working, I'm hopeful that it's just a simple thing, but maybe I spoke too soon. The next problem I noticed is the neck itself is in a crazy back bow right now. I hope the truss rod will save me. I don't know yet. It might be completely trash. We'll have to see. And also we can tell right away that this guitar enjoyed a pro setup before it came to me. The bridge is like floating a centimeter off the body and it looks like there's just a single spring down there, which is obviously, you know, like the real Strat guys know the single spring secret. Everyone used it from Hendrix to SRV. Yeah, okay. I think it's time to take it apart. Maybe we should look at some history first. Yeah, no, we're not going to go into the history of Musima itself. This is some of their factory building that they built in like the 60s in Markneukirchen. The building is actually much bigger and I took this photo myself. This is just the site you can see from the street actually. It's mostly in ruins today, but it's still standing, which I think is cool. It's in Markneukirchen, which is the most southeastern corner of the country. Anyway, when you think of Musima guitars, at least I tend to think of some pretty cool and unique models they made in like the late 60s, early 70s. Then around 74, they introduced newer models to replace these. What I'm showing here are just some of them. There were many more models. But what we get then is like the 25 series. I believe that's an unofficial name. But some of those say 25 on the headstock, and the most accepted theory online is that they were introduced in celebration of the 25th anniversary of the GDR. Big socialist achievement, we get new guitar models type thing, yeah, you get it. So those are all pretty cool and pretty unique guitar designs in my book, even though on the 25 series we start to see some definite Western influence, at least on the body shapes. Even though we still have some fun control layouts. At some point, Musima decided, yeah, you know what, let's wipe those and let's introduce the future. And the future came in the shape of a Strat copy and a matching P-bass. I suppose they did some market research and just figured out, hey, we want to sell these things to Western countries and this is what works well in those markets. So yeah, let's play along in the budget market and get some Western currency into our system by exporting these. If you look closer at the headstock here, you can tell at least some of them, like not all, some of them said 35 on the headstock actually. And this might be, I want to draw a line there to the 25 series. So 84 being 10 years after 74, maybe it was like for the 35th anniversary.
though I've never found any like dedicated source that states, yeah, it's a fact. This is just my assumption. They continued making these to around 1990, or like even a little bit later, so like to the definite end of the GDR and maybe even a little bit into reunited Germany before Musima folded. And in the middle of that, they introduced some extra models, right? This is what I like to call the MH series, and I believe it might have stood for Musima Heavy. You can tell we get MHS, MHX, and MHV for like a heavy Strat type thing, an Explorer type, and a V type. All pretty modern and pretty metal looking. Most notably, we get humbuckers, and those are like East German in-house developments. And we get interesting Floyd Rose style vibrato systems. And I'm still trying to figure out if they imported those from like Japan, Korea, or if they made their own. And I wouldn't be surprised if they made their own. We also get a bunch of different bass models, like jazz bass pickups in addition to the P bass, and we get a fretless. The top star is fretless actually. But more interestingly, more guitar options. And I believe all of those were available simultaneously. So we get to the regular lead star, which is like your classic Strat type guitar. We get 4 more options. And up there in the corner, yeah, there's our lead star II, which mainly differs in the humbucker in the bridge being all black and this funny narrow headstock design. And we get some other models different with different pickup setups and feature sets, and some of them even having the Floyd Rosey type thing. I think that's all we need to talk about. I'm really deep diving into this rabbit hole at the moment, but it's just so tough to find any information. I wish I could remember where I found this blue catalog here. If it was yours, let me know. I will quote you or whatever. But or maybe if we have a better quality version, please send it over. I want it.
First things first, let's get rid of those strings. Yeah, the tuners need some love for sure, just by turning them by hand here. But they're not too bad, not too much play in them. They might be okay after cleanup, we'll see. This is still in a weird angle. I suppose somebody tightened those pivot screws here completely. We'll see. Goodbye rusty strings. Those saddles are so far back. The springs are all there, but they're completely squished to death. And I have a hard time feeding through the strings here. Split shaft tuning posts would have been nice here, but oh well. From what I read, I guess they developed these tuners completely new. At first glance, they look like some, whatever, like Korean import ones, but I guess it's an in-house development. Maybe we can find some info on that. Want to take the neck off first? I think that's what we should do. By the way, there's a serial number on the back plates of all these. Previous Musimas did not have serial numbers anywhere, as far as I know. And only this series started to have them, but I haven't found any information on how to decode them yet.
Yeah, no, hold on. Actually, when you look at forums like English and German speaking forums, everybody appears to be clueless. But I got lucky and I did some searching, and I'm gonna show you. This is sovietguitars.com. It's all in Russian, and I used some translating magic here. Apparently, the first ones had the Musima logo on the neck plate. We are talking 1984 here. I've never really seen one of those, but it looks pretty cool. Then 85, next year, we get the blank neck plate. And also this one is kind of a little bit wider than before. That's interesting, not sure. Anyways, they say around 86, they started using this numbering system here, which is pretty simple in that this is like the last cipher of the year, starting in 86, and then these two are the week, and this is just some production number or whatever. On mine it says 7/21, which would make it a 1987 built in May. Yeah, I think that's nice to know. Okay, back to the video.
No rust on the screws, that's good. There are 2 little extra holes. They might have been for positioning in a routing jig or maybe for like a little hook for painting. Let's see what we get here. Oh, it seems like a tight pocket at first. So let's carefully wiggle it. The finish is loose in some areas around the heels, so I don't want to break off more than necessary here. Oh yeah, this is tight. Wow, it's excessively tight. There we go, a little bit stuck. Good neck pocket route, that's for sure. There's a number 4 punched in there. Not sure if you can tell in the light. And another positioning hole for some routing jig. 1 more positioning hole there. And the truss rod thingy, which doesn't look too mangled up, might have been unused. The pickguard screws are coming out easily so far. There doesn't seem to be too much shrinkage of the plastic, so that's good to see. Previous Musimas had this weird celluloid type pickguard material that would always shrink and sometimes even deteriorate and off-gas so much that all the metal parts would corrode. So it makes it a lot easier to have some regular standard, maybe ABS or whatever plastic on there. It's also just a single ply pickguard, which is interesting. Let's see what we get. Oh yeah, the ground wire is super short. I should disconnect that first of all. Other than that, I think those are the original pickups with the red bobbins and ceramic magnets. Original pots, original switch. Yeah, this looks untouched. This looks kind of stupid. Single spring situation. Yeah, there should have been some more in there originally. Maybe someone had to go. In some places you read about those having brass blocks on their trams. This doesn't really look like brass to me. I don't see a solder point on here like you would on the American ones, so where does this even connect? Could be wrong. Where's the wire attached? It was just in the back there and squished. Aha. So it's not really anticipated to adjust the spring tension. They just squished the wire against the back wall. That's unusual. But that means we can get the pickguard out now. Oh, I'm stupid. We still have to figure out the jack, the output jack. It's a mess today, sorry. It's been a while since I last worked on a guitar, so bear with me here. And this part appears to be the same as on my older Musima, so one of the very few parts they've kept, this little metal piece here. Let's try not to destroy the finish more than it already is. Here we go. Should come out. And it does. There's no countersinks on the bottom of those. But the milled surface is there. Pretty thick steel here. Wow, the alignment on those is terrible. Look at this one, this jumps back like 2 millimeters. That's crazy. Did somebody drill this by hand? Wow. Anyway, at first glance, I suppose I see 2 major problems that we have to tackle. Firstly, the electronics being completely dead, which I hope is something easily fixable since it looks all original and not messed with. And the other big problem is the banana neck. And I hope I can figure this out without going into heat bending and all this weird stuff. I really want to keep the frets, so I don't want to plane and level the board or anything. I I hope we can straighten it back out. And the rest, it appears to be more or less just a cleanup and assembly job and some good setup in the end. So let's dive into the individual components next. I did some quick measuring and I suppose we have a dead middle pickup maybe. And I think there is an issue with the center lock on the volume pot. I get like input there, but nothing coming out, so maybe there's something going on. I just went ahead and removed the screws, so let's check out the middle pickup. There's the springs. Let's see if we can pull the cover on this one. Alrighty, standard cover more or less. Nice looking red bobbin. A little bit of tape across the solder points. Let's see if the problem is visual. There's a tiny bit of wire just sticking out from underneath the tape, which is mildly concerning. There we have it, the damaged pickup. I removed it from the guitar and it is in fact broken. I think the red bobbins look kind of jazzy. I like that. Other than that, yeah, the ceramic pickup glued to the bottom is not really what you want to see from a high-end Strat pickup. Anyway, the connecting wires appear to be fine, but we still have this issue with the weird break happening up here, and it appears the wire is running like a cross and then out of the tape. So the only way forwards really is to pull the tape and see what happens. Nah, look at that. Gotta be ultra careful. I think I see the loose wire stuck on the tape there. Don't want to yank it off, so time for the little plier here. What the fuck? This was just off. Oh no, oh no, oh no. That's not great. No, hold on. Further investigation shows what looks like a broken start wire of the coil as well. So this is really tough to see. If I can get it in focus even. But this is not attached to the little thing down there. It was a piece of tape over there. It means we can kind of carefully unwind it. Stuck in the glue. But that gives us plenty of material to resolder it. I've had it through a few times and I'm not sure if this wire coating is solderable. Some will burn off and some won't, so I will just go ahead and carefully scrape it a little bit. Hey look, working pickup. Nice. First of all, these knobs here, in my opinion, they are worth talking about. You would think these are just your boring, typical standard Strat knobs. In fact, if you ever want to buy a Musima Lead Star like this and you have missing knobs, chances are you will never find replacements because those are very special. Let's carefully pull one. Usually relatively easy to pull. Let's see. Oh damn, what do we have here? Is that like a tiny D shaft with a metal retaining clip? Oh yeah, good luck finding replacements for those. The switch, by the way, is from Japan. It says so on the side, so this is crazy. It's an import part. I'm still not sure if the screws are original or if they had those imported as well. It's surprising since importing stuff from the West usually meant spending Western currency, which was super valuable to the state back then. And maybe the entire point of even designing Strat-like guitars like this, in order to export them to Western countries and to earn Western currency by doing so, which then they can in turn spend for like really important imports, food and stuff like that. So yeah, interesting that they got some money allocated to buy Japanese little double pole, double throw switches like this, which they only use a single pole of. And which is also very stuck. So if there is a part I might replace, it would be this one. Time for a closer look at this pickup here now. The first things to notice, and also like as a little guide to tell that this is in fact the Musima humbucker and not just some other one. You have 3 mounting screws, and notice how both coils are identical. There are no adjustable pole pieces, both just have these slugs in there. Then you have the 4 little mounting holes or whatever for putting it on a winding machine, I guess. And noticeably, all the top bobbins look to be injection molded plastic instead of the red ones we looked at before. And they are significantly rounded over on the edges, so no sharp edges here. I think this might be a good clue to tell if somebody just put a regular humbucker in their Musima, or if this is in fact the real deal. I have never heard one of those or never played one of those, so who knows? Maybe it's a secret tip, maybe it sounds amazing, maybe it's trash. Time will tell, I guess, if we can get it working. So it should all come out now. Just carefully push everything through, lift it off. Oh look, the foil just stays behind. Just a piece of thick tin foil. Interesting. And there we have it. The humbucker on a bent frame that looks like brass. Might be plated steel. We'll have to do the magnet test on this one. Super, super dirty. Mega dirty, wow. So how is it actually made? There are no real screws or anything on the bottom. Those are just like holes, and I think I can see some glue squeeze out there. Is it all just glued together? Oh, and look, we have 2 individual ceramic bar magnets under each bobbin. It's quite different from your average PAF construction. I tried some contact spray on these pots and now I do get some signal out, so apparently the problem was just a super dirty pot. The only thing is I still get some intermittent stuff from the switch here. So I thought, let's try and clean it up. It looks like it wants to come apart. I already took out one of the screws here. And while everything outside is Phillips head for the authentic looks, I guess, inside we're still firmly in flathead screw land. So, second screw, and I really hope this doesn't explode into a million little different springs and whatever. Let's take it off. Oh look, so this appears to be, does it fall out? Now there's like a retaining clip there. Little ball bearing and a spring in there. So I suppose we can, yeah we can. That's cool. You can literally like separate the mechanical from the electronic, or like the switch part. So the switch part appears to have this more or less clear plastic cover on there. Let's just, can take this out. Okay, so the plastic cover is held on with 2 tiny little clips here. There it is. Plastic cover came off. And this is the switch situation now. Well, that took some messing around, but I finally got it out. And would you believe it? These little slidey things that actually make the contact here, they're loose. 2 of them are still stuck to the little plate here. Oh damn, that's gonna be fun reassembling. But honestly, I just have to admire the effort and the amount of just the depth they went to with this little switch here, for example. Hey, let's, like, our economy is in ruins already. Let's make a freaking electric guitar for export mainly. Oh, and the original seems to have like this 5-position switch, so I guess we have to develop one. I mean, I could be wrong, but I have never seen this type of switch in any other piece of equipment, like in a radio or whatever. Because usually these electronic parts, they don't get developed for guitar. Like the same with tubes for tube amplifiers, and like none of this was developed with guitar in mind. It was all just used by the people designing guitar stuff.
Alright, another intermission. This is certainly a rabbit hole within a rabbit hole, but if I'm going to share it with anyone, it's gonna be you guys. So I found this book called Elektrogitarren by Eberhard Meinl. Yes, there's a Yamaha on the cover, but anyway, it's a East German book and it's from 1987, same year as my guitar. And interestingly, in the very last chapter of this book, he talks about improving the Stratocaster circuit. He shows the separate Strat circuit, and then he goes straight into, hey, the Musima Lead Star had a pretty cool switch with 4 positions, and each of them having these 5 differently, like 5 positions and 4 layers in the switch. And he goes on and says, you can see it like Strat circuit of the Musima Lead Star. Yeah, you can use this switch. It's much better than the original Fender switch, and you can use it for phase inversion, and you can use all kinds of fun stuff. And then he goes on and describes a few circuits where you can use like one humbucker and have like many different options with like in and out of phase and coil split and 2 humbucker circuits, and he lists all the stuff you can do, and even a little bit more crazy stuff going on and another one. And then he goes into like how to keep your guitar clean and sources. Yeah, okay, I think that's enough of a deep dive on this weird switch.
Back together, time to move on. If you do just a quick online search, you'll find all the usual horror stories about cheap guitars, like this being the nastiest plywood and pressed shoeboxes and asbestos and whatever. If you actually dig a little bit deeper, you find claims that these may be alder, actually glued in some sections and veneered. I found an old catalog type thing in a Russian forum, and it states yes, they are in fact alder with maple veneer on the top and bottom. Which, since you don't see it, I'm sure they did just to make painting and finishing a little bit easier than on like a more open-grained wood like alder. So if you look very closely in some of these cavities and holes drilled here, you can tell, yeah, it is solid wood. However, you can see some lines. I think those are just the step-over lines from milling the cavities here, and they certainly look like plywood lines at first glance. So yeah, I can see why people think that, but no, it's an alder body. All in the name of science, right? I went ahead and removed some finish on the inside here. It's definitely not plywood, but you can see these milling lines on the black side that kind of make it look like plywood. Yeah, there's definitely about 1 millimeter of veneer, and I'm no expert, but it has this reddish hue. I don't know, might be alder. All right, time to talk about little metal bits. This is the neck plate. The tuning machines look at first glance like some random Asian import machines, and to be honest, maybe they are. Know that I have evidence to prove that some of the hardware, like screws, came from Japan. I'm not sure. Did they import those? There are different styles of tuning machines on Lead Star 1s and Lead Star 2s. You see these ones with like the 5-corner backplate. There's also ones with a 6-corner that has like a little triangle on top here. Otherwise, the buttons look the same.
And on the top you have the ones I have with the pressed in bushings. And there are also ones with like a threaded kind of stud and a threaded thing you screw on top, like the more modern ones. However, you can pull off these covers. You're supposed to, at least. Okay. Here's one I prepared earlier. And would you believe it? The little screw in there has the freaking dot, signifying it might be not a Phillips, but actually like a JIS, Japanese screw, again. So we're none the wiser. Did they import the screw to put in there, or did they just import the entire tuning machine? Because the style looks to be pretty common on some import Japanese stuff from the 80s. Anyway, I'm not going to change them yet. As always, I will try to clean them up and put them on and see if they work, because I would like to keep the guitar as original as possible. Finally, we have the drum unit here. And this in itself is pretty interesting, because I'm pretty sure this is an in-house development. First, you have flathead screws, and these are like typical East German ones. You can tell by the shape of the head and everything. I guess they put flathead back there because nobody really sees it, and everything else is Phillips or Japanese stuff. These are not bent steel as on vintage Fenders. Those are some die-cast and maybe milled type thing. We'll take it apart. I did a magnet test on it. The block is some type of, I'm not even sure, like aluminum alloy or maybe some type of zinc block. You can tell it was quite crudely cast. You can see some of the original casting surface here, and then just put on a belt sander to flatten it a little bit. You can just see some sanding marks on the edges here. And look how crooked they drilled the thing. You tell they're not even remotely in a line. I thought that was quite fun. The magnet test shows some magnetism around here. And yeah, there's like the bottom part of the tram arm, I think, sheared off and stuck in there. So somebody over-tightened their tram arm and broke it off. But there's still enough threads above there, so I'm sure we can get a replacement arm in. I'm not going to attempt drilling out a piece of steel out of this soft thing. That's not going to go great. This top part here, which looks like some kind of chrome-plated steel, it's brass. Believe it or not, there's some finish flaking off here in these holes, and you can tell, yeah, it's brass and it's non-magnetic. So I don't know, I think we can just take it apart, clean it, and use it as is. There's one little height adjustment grub screw missing here. I hope it's metric, and I think I can dig through my stash and maybe find a replacement. Shouldn't be a problem. For the springs, I haven't measured them yet. Remember, I have just one. I think some modern replacement random springs will have to do. So one original, maybe I'll put 2 replacement ones next to it. We'll see how it sets up everything. Yeah. For the output jack, which is pretty fun because it was not the usual Strat style, but actually on the edge of the body. This plate, at least like this style and shape, was used on other guitars when they stopped using these plastic output jacks that always crumble and first moved to this style in somewhere in the 70s. It might be 74 when they changed over to the plastic pickups and everything. And this jack, which goes in there, is very heavy duty. This feels heavy. This everything is like super solid and sturdy. This is great quality. This is like on par, if not better, than your Switchcraft or whatever. So just clean it up, and I think this should be a very solid piece of equipment. Yeah, let's get polishing, right? All right, so when I took these apart, I noticed they're quite heavy, much too heavy to be some cheap die-cast zinc or whatever. So I filed away a little bit on this edge here on the bottom. And if you can see that, it's brass. Wow, we have solid brass saddles on a brass plate that's chrome-plated. And I still don't know what the weird block is made out of. Probably some type of aluminum, whatever.
There are some lead stars known, like the earlier ones I think, that had actually brass blocks. Mine is not one of those, unfortunately. I don't really know if the earlier ones or later ones or which years. I would have to do some digging and compare photos. Some had brass blocks. That's all we need to know. So if you want to buy one, maybe look out for one with a brass block. I don't know. $106. And remember, there's still a little bit of steel stuck in there, maybe like 6 millimeters, 8 millimeters, whatever. One of those. 4.25, 4.2. This one, about 77 grams. So the neck is probably the most surprising thing for me on this guitar. For Musima, this neck profile is amazingly modern. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if I found this on like an Ibanez or something. It's not really your average C shape you find on like a random Strat copy. This feels very flat and very fast. And it also adds to the fact that we don't have the usual radius you would associate with Fenders. But this is like your typical flat Musima radius, which is about like a 15-inch, roughly. It's probably weird on a Strat type guitar, but older Musimas always had this kind of flat radius on there. The fret wire itself is this quite big and heavy jumbo wire, which is also unheard of for Musima and quite interesting. The headstock has lost some finish. I will not touch it up. I think it adds to the charm overall. Nice rosewood board. We do have side dot markers, like actual little plastic dots, like right on the edge between rosewood and maple. On the back, there are two numbers punched in, like an 8 and a 4. Could be 48, 84, whatever. Does not match the date because we have determined this is like an 87 guitar. The logo Lead Star II is interesting in itself because it has like these jagged edges if you look super close, almost a bit pixelated. So most likely this is just a very rough screen printing process going on there. On the general condition side, we do have lots of little cracks in the finish, which tells me those are in fact nitro. You don't see them this bad very often. Usually they look pretty clean when you compare other photos. Mine is kind of an extreme example. We do have remnants of the little sticker up here that once said made in GDR. Of course, somebody had to try and peel it off, which is a shame. Other than that, the truss rod up here was completely loose when I got it. This is just like a regular truss rod nut on there, 14 millimeters across, by the way. However, we did have an extreme back bow, like to the point of making the guitar completely unplayable. It was, of course, stored under full string tension on some attic for 20 years. All the guitars I get are kind of in this condition. So I attempted heat straightening it. I did 2 passes overnight with like low, medium heat, infrared light bulbs and stuff like that, but it was sitting a week since then and it kind of kept the shape. Only thing is we get a little bit of fret sprout going on because I suppose I dried out the board applying the heat. Yeah, it's okay. Talking about fret ends, this is the best fret job I've ever seen on a factory Musima. These are very smooth, nicely dressed. The round overs are very comfortable and even the fretboard is rounded over. Like this has potential to be a very, very nice neck if the straightening ends up holding and it doesn't distort back and stuff like that could happen. So for now, I think I will try to adjust it as straight as possible. It is close to straight right now. And we'll attempt the usual fret leveling, crowning, and I think some fret ends have lifted slightly. They will get a drop of super glue. When we talk again, we should have shiny frets.
Et voilà,
Shiny. Yeah, with the fretwork done, we're actually super close to putting everything back together. I have some moderate tension on the truss rod now, but it remains nice and straight, so I have high hopes this actually plays great. I plan on keeping the original nut for now. There's really just one thing I'm concerned with now, and that's the overall geometry of the neck pocket, like the depth and the angle. So before that, the action was so terrible that I couldn't really tell anything about the setup. Who knows, we might end up needing a neck pocket shim. You know what's better than new guitar day? Yeah, it's putting back together an old guitar day. One that you spend many hours cleaning and repairing every little part. And there it is back together now. First string up was kind of a bit of a disaster, honestly, but I expected that. Kept the original nut, but the slots are a bit weird, some are a bit too high, one is actually too low. I think I'll just fill that up with some super glue and some dust and try to keep the nut. The electronics work, which is amazing, and I'm happy to report that all the pickups do what they should. And they actually kept the reverse wound, reverse polarity thing of the middle pickup, so you get like hum cancelling middle positions. I'm positively surprised. The tuners as well are pretty good. The setup needs some doing. I will end up needing a neck shim. I will need to put more tension on the truss rod, and since there's a bit of broken off trem arm stuck in there, I can't really get another trem arm in deep enough. This is like an M6 thread, by the way. So I will just block this off with a piece of wood for now and use it as kind of as a hardtail. But I don't think I will bore you with Strat setup because there's like a million videos on Strat setup on the internet already. So when we see next time, we should have this playable and plug into an amplifier, right? Here's the finished guitar, finally, ready to play, set up halfway decent, I suppose. And would you know it, I think I found the perfect amplifier to demo it with. This beautiful, and by beautiful I mean acquired taste, Regent VM30, which is, if I'm correct, like one of the very last East German amplifier designs, or maybe the last. Like, I think the circuit diagram for this says 89, who knows. It's transistor amplifier, 3-band EQ, spring reverb, 12-inch speaker, but it's interesting in a way that I guess it's one of the first amplifiers they really intended for overdriven guitar tones. Most of the earlier ones had full-range hi-fi type speakers, which sounded horrible when you drive them pretty hard. This one even has an inbuilt overdrive circuit. It's called Tube Drive, and you can switch it on. It's not a tube, it's an overdrive circuitry. But if you think, hey, I know what it is, Max, it's gonna be this little green box from Japan from the 80s. No, it's not. It's a unique circuit in there, and it's interesting, and I guess we'll talk about it more in the future, maybe. However, it's not unreasonable to assume that an amplifier like this and a guitar like this would have been played together or bored together back then. And I also have a period correct East German guitar cable for full effect. Yeah, so let's hear how it sounds, right? Well, the clean sound is somewhat unremarkable, I'd say, but in a usable way. The EQ is pretty powerful, so you can dial in different stuff, and I mean, it sounds like a guitar speaker finally, another hi-fi speaker, which is a big thing. The reverb is pretty cool. It's a relatively bright sounding one, so let me crank it a little bit. Listen to this. Yeah, a bit less maybe. So the little switch here splits the humbucker. When it's down, it's all just single coil, so you get your 5 usual Strat positions basically. When you flip it up, it's the humbucker, so like position 5 and position 4, or is it like 1 and 2? Whatever, it's going to give you the humbucker plus the center one. So yeah, let me just quickly walk through the positions. Going to start with a single coil mode here. And now for the humbucker. And the rest would be basically identical. So, without further ado, what we've all been waiting for, let's engage the little tube drive feature on the amp and see how this sounds with the humbucker preferably. Neck pickup maybe. You know what this needs? Chorus. I plugged in some analog chorus, and that's like a good chance to use the effects loop, which is also something new for East German amps, effects loops. Wow. Okay. so all in all, I'd call this surprising results. First of all, I'm surprised I got the super bowed neck straight again. I did not expect that. It was seriously one of the worst I've seen. And to be honest, I anticipated this guitar to be, yeah, like a curiosity for my collection because it was one of the very last designs and one of the first times where they ever used a humbucker. I think there was only one humbucker in East German guitars, and this guitar is one of the few models that had it. And I thought, yeah, it would be kind of cool to see how they did it. But I'm not really a Strat guy. I'm not really super Strat 80s guitarist. And to be honest, I thought this guitar is pretty ugly as well as the amplifier. It's like not aesthetically pleasing in a way that most of the 60s gear we are used to is. But it's really fun. I have to be honest. It's fun to play. It sounds fun. I like putting some chorus on it just because it sounds the way I imagine it should sound. I love it. Thanks for watching, guys. And catch you next time. Bye.